Hello, welcome to Prac 7, where we're going to be looking at the electrolytes. From the announcements page, you can see a link to some results for Prac 7. If we open up that link, so we can read through some of the introduction there for the electrolytes, and we see electrolytes are minerals that are positively or negatively charged. So here are a list of some of the common electrolytes, so things like sodium, calcium, potassium. So these are some of the positively charged electrolytes, and then we've got some negatively charged electrolytes like the chlorine and the bicarbonate. So imagine you're well aware of electrolyte drinks, such popular ones such as Gatorade and Powerade, which contains many of these electrolytes. Now we need these electrolytes to maintain our water balance, to control things such as our blood pH, and also involved in the nervous system, muscle action. So if you're involved in physical activity, you may need to replace some of the lost water. And if you're involved in very vigorous physical activity, you might also need to replace not just the water, but also some of the lost electrolytes. Now, the aim of Prac 7 was to produce our own version of the electrolyte drink, so something that's similar to Gatorade or something that's similar to Powerade, and then do a sensory evaluation and compare it to the original products. The other thing we're going to do is actually look at the costs of producing these electrolytes. So here's our list of materials. So mainly water, sugar, the actual electrolytes themselves. So we're using salt and monopotassium as our electrolyte. And we've also got some citrate there as well. We've got some colouring, some flavouring. So in this prac, what we're going to do, well, what we were planning to do was to do some reverse engineering. So have a look at the nutritional label, have a look at the actual ingredients in these electrolyte drinks, and have a look at the quantities, and then try to make our own version of the electrolyte drinks. So in table 1, we've got our suggested recipes. So that's from reverse engineering. So looking at the actual electrolyte drinks, the Gatorade, the Powerade, and working out what sort of ingredients are in there, what sort of quantities are there, and then we're going to try to duplicate these products. So for table 2, what you're required to do is to work out the actual costs based on these recipes. So you've got the actual costs per gram of each of the ingredients. So then you just need to work out, well, how many grams did we use? And then work out the total cost for each ingredient, and you'll have a grand total for the final product itself. I've added a link here to a YouTube video in which they're preparing their own version of Gatorade.
Chef John from foodwishes.com with how to make your own homemade sports drink. That's right. Would you rather pay $2 a bottle for something that's artificially flavored, artificially colored, and probably not that great for you? Or one you can make yourself in just minutes using real ingredients for just pennies a bottle? I know it's a tough call, so don't answer yet. Why don't you think about it while I get started with what I like to call Greaterade? And that's because it's just like Gatorade, only greater. And we will begin this incredibly easy formula by adding 1 cup of water to a kettle or pot. And yes, we are going to add a lot more water to this, but what we want to do is start with just 1 cup in which to dissolve our ingredients. The first of which would be our sweetener, in my case honey. And yes, if you want, you could certainly use regular sugar, but I do like the honey. And I think most people would agree it's probably better for you. In fact, the only people that think white sugar is just as healthy work for the sugar companies. And you have to admit, that's kind of a weird coincidence. But anyway, to do a sports drink, we're going to need some type of sweetener, as well as some type of salt. And personally, I'm going to recommend Himalayan pink salt, which is not only a pure salt with no additives, but it also contains lots of trace minerals that apparently your body would enjoy replacing. So we'll need to toss in some salt, preferably pink. And then next up, we're going to add 1 optional, but easy to find ingredient, a powdered calcium and magnesium supplement. And from what I hear, that stuff's great for your muscles and nervous system, among other things. So a little touch of the old calcium and magnesium powder. And then last but not least, we will add just a little touch of cayenne. No, not enough to taste, but still enough to work a little magic on your insides. And then what we'll do at this point is grab a whisk and bring this over to the stove and set that on low heat, and we will warm that up, stirring until everything's dissolved, which is only going to take a minute. So we don't want this to simmer or boil. We simply want it to heat up, and how you'll know you're done is everything will be dissolved. And it should look something like this. And by the way, don't worry if you get a couple dark particles of the salt that never dissolve. Those are just rocks. And then what we'll want to do is let this cool down to room temperature while we pull together our fruit juices. So for this recipe, we're going to want 1 cup of any kind of fruit juice. Preferably freshly squeezed, please. So I'm going to start with some orange juice, which as you can see I'm straining to remove the pulp. I will admit orange juice pulp is my kryptonite, although it really doesn't sap my strength as much as it just annoys me. But anyway, my juice blend is going to start with some orange juice, to which I'm going to squeeze in a couple limes, as well as a couple nice juicy lemons. And people, please stop emailing me telling me to microwave the lemons first to make them juicier. Everybody knows that one. And like I said, we're going to want to end up with about a cup, or a little bit over. And then all we have to do to finish our Graterade is add our freshly squeezed juice to our sports drink base. We can also go ahead and dump in the rest of the water. And we will take a whisk and give that a stir. And believe it or not,
So in our Prac 7, for making our own electrolyte sports drinks, we would have followed something similar to the YouTube video in that, we've got some water, we added some sugar, added various electrolytes. So on the video you saw they were adding table salt. We'd also be using table salt. On the video they're using some, I think, magnesium, and we were using some potassium. So again, a different type of electrolyte. They were using some natural juice, and we were going to use some natural flavored orange flavor. Okay, so the plan was for the class to make 2 versions of Gatorade and 2 versions of Powerade, and then compare it to the original products. And then what we were going to do as a class was do a sensory evaluation. We're going to evaluate each of those 6 products for sweetness, saltiness, flavor, overall acceptability, and then we'll actually end up with a score for each product out of 20. So here are the results we're going to use. We're going to use the results from last year. So they went through and evaluated the 6 products. So we had product 1 and 2 were the class versions of Gatorade. This G is the actual Gatorade. Product 3 and 4 were the class versions of Powerade, and then product P was the actual Power. So over here are the scores. So these are the average scores for the class. Oh no, sorry, this is the individual student scores, and these are the class scores over here. So we can see average scores. So product 1 on average scored 11.16 out of 20. Product 2 on average scored 13.12. Product 3 scored 10.2. Product 4 scored a very low points out of 4 out of 20. And then we've got the controls. The Gatorade scored 15.2 and the Powerade scored 18.15. So what these results tell us is that our versions of Gatorade, which were sample 1 and 2, were pretty close to the real Gatorade. So we can see particularly sample 2 scored 13.12, which is pretty close to the actual Gatorade, which scored 15.2. Whereas with Powerade, we really didn't get very close to Powerade at all. The best we got was sample 3, which scored 10.2, but the actual Powerade scored 18.16. So it's a very significant difference between our version of Powerade and the real version of Powerade. So here in our discussion, you can talk about how easy it was, well, relatively how easy it is to make your own version of these electrolyte drinks, the costs involved, and how close you can get to actual products. So with the Gatorade, we got very close. Powerade, not very close. Any questions? You can look up this one on online somewhere. How long it will actually take to burn off the calories. Question 2 is about comparing sort of moderate exercise to elite or very intensive exercise. So you really want to work out, are you going to be losing water, or you can be losing both water and electrolytes. Question 3, you can use the results from last year as to whether people could tell the difference between our versions of the sports drinks and the commercial products. So that last part, it's looking like there's something in the Powerade that's not on the label, and we're not actually getting very close to the commercial version. Question 4 is you just need to fill in table 2, where you're doing analysis of the actual costs of the electrolyte sports drink. So in summary, for Prac 7 on electrolytes, what you're going to do is fill in table 2, do a cost analysis, work out how much it would actually cost to actually produce a sports drink. Have a look at the YouTube video to see how you can produce your own version of an electrolyte sports drink using water, sugar, added salts. and some flavouring. And lastly, you're going to be using some class results from last year, where we evaluated our versions of the sports drinks versus the commercial products, Gatorade and the Powerade. So you should have enough information to complete your discussion and answer the 4 questions. Thanks very much.